Hello everybody, so today is kind of a part 2. We're going to be making this cute little shoulder bag with these eyelet designs, but this time we're going to be knitting it. So last video we did a crochet version and today we're going to tackle that knitting version. So for this project you're going to use one skein of yarn. I'm using Loops and Threads Impeccable yarn. This is the colorway Burgundy. And this recommends a, 5mm needles or a US 8. I'm actually going to be using 6.5mm. This is just what I have on hand, so it's going to have to work. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and start. This is going to be a pretty beginner-friendly project. If this is your first knitting project, maybe I would start with something more simple like a scarf or a hat, but this is a good, maybe third or fourth project. We are going to do the long tail cast on method, and I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but I will link a video down below that does go into some more detail. And I just got some coffee, ooh, yummy yummy. So we'll go ahead and long tail cast on. So the way that you do that, if this is your first time, you're gonna kind of get your yarn into kind of a triangle, insert your hook, then you're gonna twist it, get the yarn from under your thumb, and get the yarn from your index finger. And that's gonna put 2 stitches on to your needle, kind of like a slip knot in crochet. And then from there, you're just gonna keep going, and the rest of them will just put 1 stitch onto the needle. So go ahead, and we are going to do 25 cast on stitches. So 6, 7, I'll meet you when I have them. Alright, I have my 25 stitches and I sorely underestimated the length I would need for that long tail cast on, but that's okay. This will be enough to weave in. But I would definitely recommend having a cast on length a bit more like that left over. So it's okay. We have the length, the base of our bag there, or it's actually going to be the top of our bag. But this is going to grow about 1 or 2 inches once we start knitting with it. Go ahead and garter stitch 4 rows. Alright, so I have done garter stitch and knit my 4 rows of garter. And at this point we're just going to check the length of our bag, or I guess it would be the width. So my bag is probably going to turn out a bit bigger than yours because I'm using a larger hook size or a larger needle size than the recommended one. But you can definitely go back, pull out, and change the amount of cast on stitches to suit your fancy. But I'm going to go ahead and do 4 more rows of garter stitch, and then I'll come back and we will work on those little eyelet designs. So just like the construction of our crochet bag, we are going to be making 1 long panel and then folding it, stitching up the sides, then creating our handle, and then I will have an option of adding these tassels as well. So we are getting started on this first part here. So I do have my 8 rows of garter stitch now. We're going to go ahead and start with that eyelet design. So to start, you're just going to go ahead and knit 2. Then you're going to yarn over to create an increased stitch, and then you're going to knit 2 together. And that's going to go ahead and create a little hole there, and that is going to serve as your eyelet. Yarn over, knit 2 together, yarn over, knit 2 together. And if you've never knitted 2 together before, it's just a form of decrease where instead of going into this stitch, you're going to go into this stitch and the stitch in front of it and treat it as if it were one stitch. And just keep going until you reach the last few stitches. Alright, and now we're just to those last 2 stitches there, and you are just going to knit those 2. And this is a good opportunity to check that you still have the right stitch count. The tension is going to be a little bit weird, but once we go through the next row, you'll see that change back again. Here is how our eyelets look about 3 rows afterwards. This detail can be skipped if you would like. It is definitely the hardest part of the whole project, but I do think it just adds that extra nice touch, and we're going to mimic it on the other side of the bag. So go ahead and keep doing your garter stitches. Just wanted to show you guys what that looks like. Alright, so I went ahead and did 70 rows of garter. You can do however many you would like. I just found that this was really the best length, as we are going to be folding it over, and you're just going to fold over to that eyelet, and you'll just stop whenever you have the length that you prefer. This one was good enough for me because the garter is going to stretch a bit, especially when you have items inside of it. So this was the best size for me. So we're going to go ahead and duplicate those eyelets. Yarn over, stitch 2 together, and go ahead and repeat that all the way across. And now that we have our eyelets, we're going to go ahead and do our 8 rows of garter. So I'll meet you back here when I have those done as well. And I do have those 8 rows of garter, and so we are just going to do a traditional cast off. So the way that we're going to do that is insert our needle, do a knit stitch, and repeat, and then pull the first stitch over the second stitch. So again, just a knit stitch, and then pull that the first stitch over the second stitch, and go ahead and do that all the way across. Alright, I've finished my bind off, so I'm just going to go ahead, pull up that last loop, and I'm going to cut a pretty long end so that we can use that to sew this side together. So go ahead and grab your embroidery needle, and we are going to bring that through the loop to secure that cast off. And then at this point you should see that your 2 ends match up pretty perfectly. The eyelets will be at the same level, and we have our bag taking shape here. So to sew the sides together, you're going to match up the 2 ends, and we are going to do a blanket stitch all the way across. So pull that through and make sure that you pull it back through the loop so that you have a nice and secure stitch. So again, kind of matching row for row, stitch for stitch, and then you're going to place your needle back through that loop so that you have a secured loop all the way down. So the blanket stitch just ensures that this is going to be a really sturdy seam, because the bag is likely to experience some heavy use. We just want to make sure that we're making a really sturdy product. So matching stitch for stitch, or row for row, blanket stitch all the way down. And I'll meet you down there. Alright, and now that we've sewn up one side, we're going to go ahead and repeat that on the other side. Again, blanket stitch, matching row for row, and I'll meet you when I'm done with that as well. I have sewn up both of the sides, and I went ahead and turned this inside out so that the seams were on the inside. So we have our bag here. Now we just need to add our strap. So you can absolutely do an I-cord strap, but for to make this a bit easier for everybody, I am just going to go ahead and do a knit strap. For our knit strap, we are going to go ahead and cast on 5 stitches. So that's 2, 3, 4, and 5. And you're just gonna knit this until you have a length that's comfortable for you, and I'll let you know how many rows I completed when I'm done with my handle. And I do have my shoulder handle done. I did 136 rows, 5 stitches, and it really zooms by. It didn't take me long at all. So I just cast off, left some long ends on either end, and you do want to measure this against your body to make sure that you have a good length. The way I did this was that once I felt like I had a good length, I went ahead and took some safety pins, pinned it to the bag on both sides, and then put something in the bag to weigh it down. And because this is garter stitch, it is quite stretchy, so you just want to account for that when you are measuring for your bag. So we're going to go ahead and sew these ends on here. We're going to sew them onto the inside of the bag, and just pick one of your ends of your handle, and we're just going to do a simple stitch. This tutorial is mostly just a template for what you can do. You can definitely make this however you would like, with any of the stitches that you would like, any size you would like. It's just to show you kind of what's possible, that when you think of knitting, you don't necessarily think of a shoulder bag, but you can definitely do that. I mean, there's so much you can do with knitting. So I am just going to blanket stitch this across to give it some extra security. And I do want to note, because I used a much larger needle size than recommended for this yarn, I do have a bit more of a flexible bag. If you did want a sturdier bag or a thicker bag, just use either the recommended needle size or even go up a size, go down a size, so that you do have a denser fabric. Alright, so I've sewed that end, and because this is a bag, I am just going to knot the end there. And blanket stitch is really a knot anyways, so just going to make sure that's really tight on the end there, and then we are just going to weave in our end, and I'm just going to weave it into the blanket stitches actually, and weave it back to make sure it's nice and sturdy, and keep a finger on the other side to make sure that your needle doesn't accidentally pass through on that side, and stretch it out, and then you'll just go ahead and cut that end off. And go ahead and repeat this with the other side, and then we'll get to work on those tassels. To make our tassels, I'm going to go ahead and use this remote control. You can definitely wrap around your phone if you would prefer. This is just about the size that I want my tassel to be. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap around 30 times. I've wrapped around 30 times, so I'm just going to cut my yarn, my working end off there. And I'm going to shimmy this down to the end of the remote control and off of it, making sure to keep the integrity of the loop there. Then we're going to go ahead and cut up a spare piece of yarn, long enough so that you can use it to sew into your project. And poke one end through your loop. And then go ahead and tie a double knot tightly. And then you are going to keep those top ends separate and cut off at the bottom evenly. And then you're going to cut another spare piece of yarn to tie off the head of the tassel. Kind of comb it out, make sure it's all even. And you are going to tie this tightly around the head of your tassel. And this yarn is a little bit slippery, so just be patient with yourself. Tie that really tightly. And then one end is going to be kind of sticking up here. You're gonna go ahead and you'll just tuck that end in. And then keeping the top bits separately again, you're gonna comb out your tassel, kind of get any weird bumps out of it. And then you are going to just kind of comb through it to get the edges, and like you're giving a haircut, just trim off any uneven edges there. And you've got your tassel, and you can go ahead and attach it on either side, just sewing in. I went ahead and sewed our one tassel on there, and I made a second one, so I'll go ahead and show you how I just sewed it on really quickly. Take one end, thread your needle, and I am going to sew it on kind of at just the base of the handle on this side here. Loop it through, and I'm actually just going to go ahead and double knot this. And then we will go ahead and re-thread this again. And I'm just gonna tuck these ends into the little collar of our tassel here. All right, and we have our wonderful finished product here. So I am gonna steam block this and pull out all of those little cat hairs that always somehow get in into my project, no matter how careful I am. But I'm gonna go ahead and steam block that, and you have a perfect present for Christmas, for any winter holiday, and you can make a hat to match with it. I think this was a 100-gram skein, and I still have about half of it. So you could definitely make some matching hats, gloves, but just a perfect present. You can fit your phone, your wallet, your keys, everything you need in there. And thank you so much for watching. So this is Abigail with Pinkstone Threads. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more content. Thank you so much. Bye.